Hello everyone and welcome back to Make Believe. We're playing World and Economica. Last time, Yoshiharu and Hagana learned about the debt that everyone's having and what the consequence is and how much time they have left to deal with that. So they started working on stock trading to gain money for the neighborhood. And now we're reaching the end of the deadline. We got like couple days. I don't remember if we have a couple days left or we're on the final day now. And we have about the same as with the virtual stock market. So it's a repeat of the scenario. Of course, with some differences. Such as the number of people trading stocks is not going down, but it's also the real market. So there's a lot of different things going on here. Let's see if there's something they adapt from that change, and this time they actually managed to win. Outside, twilight was falling. The real action was about to happen in Newton City. I opened the computer and sent a mail off to Barton. Oh yeah, he was also telling Barton about like there was an emergency, so he had to delay his trip to go with Barton, and Barton seemed to completely understand it, which is surprisingly nice of him. Let's see the mail. Can you meet up? Immediately, a response came. Certainly, I can. Let's meet at the Royal Central Hotel. I closed the computer and tossed it in my bag. Wait. Did we already do the hell? Hold up. I'm a little lost about why meet up with Barton right now. Yeah, talk about the gamble did not work on the investment contest. And then how heads out. Okay, there we go. Now, and I think I missed a line. And then, mustering what little strength I had, I ran at full tilt through the night-filled town. I ran through the dazzling nightscape of Newton City. From their perspective, redeveloping the port districts probably meant nothing to them. So maybe Yoshiharu is trying to get a new perspective with Barton's help to see what he can do to save the situation. Since last time he attempted, it did not work. So I don't think they have a lot of confidence right now. 80,000, 100,000 moles, that was something you could deal with. If you were foolish enough to be ruined by losing that much, you didn't belong in the mill in the first place. That's what I thought in the beginning. But living in Lisa's church and trading alongside Hagana, there was something that I came to understand. The connections between others won't change because of money. In the case of lying on Lisa's lap, if I could have that for 50,000 moles, I might have paid. If that were the case, what about that night when Hagana listened to me talk about my dream while I held her hand under the covers? How much was that worth? Once Hagana could only see me as trapped, showing no hope or much of anything in her facial expressions. Now she's come to showing me her smile. How much was that? Yeah, she's very bonded with Yoshiharu. They're very close now. So it pains me to think that they'll part their ways soon. And then, thinking about Hagana, I imagined that it was the same for the people of the town and their families. Chris and her father were the same, though in the end, I hadn't seen Chris' mothers even once. I'd imagine it would be an ordinary one episode story that I didn't care to hear about. Okay. I ran through Newton City. I ran through the moon's richest area, being pulled along by the thread of fortune. One big trade is pulled along by a different trade, which then takes the form of a big profit. That was the last thing I aimed at in the investment contest. And if that manifests in the marketplace, then naturally it should happen in reality too. All of it was how people carried out their lives, how people are influenced. So all the good fortune I'd encountered was being pulled along by a different bit of luck that I believed in as I headed towards it. The Royal Central Hotel, a super high-level hotel that costs at least 1,000 moons a night. From the limousines at the front entrance, important government figures, and the wealthy and the bodyguards streamed through, probably since it was a weekend. This was the third time I came here. I wasn't even nervous, and the doorman recognized me. He flashed a friendly smile towards me as he opened the door. He's starting to make this a common occurrence. Well trained, I headed towards the cafe. The people who recognized me smiled as they led me there. Of course, a customer. And they recognized that he's with Barton. Barton had his interest in me. He had his interest in my abilities. If so, then something should be possible. Be firm in readiness. Do not waver. Soon, I stood before Barton. As usual, he sat comfortably at a chair, and today he was reading a real, old-fashioned book. I apologize for the short notice. Look at Barton over here. Not worry. Just so happened that my schedule was free. Barton spoke as he placed a bookmark in the book and looked at me. Barton's expression was firm as he looked at me, which was probably how it always was at each time. You look frightened. I have a favor to ask. Barton offered me a chair, but I remained standing as I spoke. I would like you to invest in me. Invest. Barton repeated that as he once again offered me a chair. Well, first, take a seat. As you are right now, this isn't a negotiation, but an entreaty. He grinned broadly as he offered me a chair for the third time. I sat down, finally, and after Barton rang a bell, a waiter came out. Would you like some Irish coffee? As I started to say coffee, I corrected myself. Hot cocoa. This last few days, I will drink it alongside Hagana. As you wish. Not bothering with something as inelegant as writing it down, he bowed once and stepped away. I mean, if it's something as simple as just a hot cocoa, it doesn't really need writing down, I guess. But if a big order, then it's kind of risky. Barton sighed deeply and leaned back in his chair. A small amount of silence fell. I spoke. Oh, we're getting this shot again. I didn't think we would come back here. And that classic music? I would like you to invest in me. Barton said that as he looked at me. Compared to the first time I saw him, his facial expression was intense. Invest in you. It's what you said, is it not? If that is the case, then rather than as a headhunter, Barton Clodwisen, I would have to look at this from the perspective of Barton Clodwisen, representative of the Britannica. It almost felt as if Barton's body swelled inside. It was the overpowering feeling given off by an influential person. I felt as if I'd be blown away if I didn't plant my feet firmly. Will you be able to turn a profit for me? A greedy loan shark taking away the last move from a poor man. Something like that would be no match for Barton's intensity. With large sums of money invested, this was an overwhelming ambition that only those who earn great deals of money could dare to have. When you're really wealthy, people bow their heads to you unconditionally. I gritted my teeth, then spoke. Permission to speak? Of course. I took a deep breath, then I spoke. I would like to borrow 300,000 moles. Barton raised an eyebrow at this. 300,000 moles? Well, that is... Barton started to say, but shorted lightly. Excuse me. Well, that is a surprising amount of money. It must be a joke. I pressed on. The annual interest rate is 20%. And the expected maturation date? If you are able to wait 10 years, then I'll return it by then. If the annual rate is 20%, after 10 years, it will multiply 5 times and become 900,000 more. But where the Earth, there's a scattering of white-collar workers who earned about that much over their lifetimes. Does the Britannica consider such earnings to be on the low end of the scale? At my words, Barton's mouth curled very slightly into the shape of a smile. Not bad. Wait, 20%. So, okay. So it's not composite. It's based on the initial value. I was wondering about that of the rate, annual rate, if it's like composite. So the first year, 300 plus 20%, it would be 360, and then the second year would be 360 plus 20%, or is 300 20% of 300 plus the 360 at the end. So yeah, so 10 years, 200% of 300, so that's 900. That's why it's a simple one, just based on the initial value. Because if it was a composite one, I would be very impressed that he made that math very quickly. As Barton left, the drinks arrived. The cocoa is here. It's his. Barton gestured towards me politely, and hot cocoa was placed before me. Please enjoy. Ah. Barton raised his hand, and the waiter stood back. Barton reached into his coat, pulled out a small bottle of alcohol from his breast pocket, and poured the contents into his coffee cup. For times like these, you need alcohol for a bit more of a kick. He said it in a mischievous manner. After pouring out half the bottle's contents, Barton looked at the cup, then spoke. After 10 years, you will make 900,000 moles, and become an impressive manager at the Britannica then, or possibly independently. I stuck to my guns for the sake of doing so. But, as much as I stuck to my guns, Barton's actions became sluggish. Well, in asking you to join me, a lesser individual suggesting 900,000 moles would be rather shocking and perhaps hard to imagine. In that case, but why 300,000 moles? I doubt you're going to use it to buy liquors or something. This wasn't small change at all. To Barton, it was meaningless sum of money, but it wasn't small change. I read it myself and spoke. With that money, a lot of people can be saved. Barton breathed in and laughed. His large frame shook all over as he laughed. For the people of Schrodinger's Street, this was what you call an act of mercy. Of course, he would laugh. However, the gratitude you get could be sold later for much more. At my words, Barton's laughter stopped immediately. Huh? Oh? See? I kind of got the gist of how he would react. For various reasons, right now, I'm in possession of the gathered funds from a lot of people. Those people borrow money from someone else, so these funds are all they have for the sake of paying off those debts. But it isn't enough to pay it off, so my intention is to gather to further grow that amount. To gather funds to further grow that amount. Very wise. He said that in an almost ridiculous manner. Also, the lender those people received money from had borrowed money from someone else, and the origin of all that are a number of land speculators. Barton's face became serious. And then, apparently, the place we all live in has become the target for a redevelopment project. The borrowers built their own homes and lived there holding the rights to the land. That is why, if this redevelopment project goes underway, they want to hold out until the government reimburses them as the properties will become very valuable. But if the collectors come, they'll take everything, leaving nothing. Thus, the 300,000 moles I wish to borrow, an investment, right? Barton corrected me. Yeah, it's not borrowing money, it's an investment. But there was kindness in it. Barton looked at me quietly. After redevelopment, that 300,000 moves investment will change over and become the debt of gratitude from the many people who hold those lands rights. And that would be greater than the annual rate of 20%, you say. Correct. In my words, Barton let out a slight groan. So, that's what you mean. What do you think? I asked once more. I got a response. Barton is not the sort who wouldn't understand this. In terms of gain and loss, without a doubt, these would be gains. Barton sipped on the Irish coffee he'd spiked, and for a bit he held it to his lips and drank it down. The words that came out were not what I would expect after drinking hot coffee. They were cold as ice. Oof. This does not sound like good news. I must decline. Yep. I was dumbfounded, and for a number of seconds I couldn't respond to that. Why not? At my outburst, Barton frowned and put the cup down. It's a problem in how one lives. Barton said, perhaps he was saying that it would just be best to let people in trouble ruin themselves instead. I don't want you to misunderstand me. If I could, I would try to offer assistance. In that case, but I am Barton Clodwisen of the Britannica, not Barton Clodwiser the headhunter. The invested funds I've handled number in the several tens of billions of moves. It is not money on a global scale by any means, but it is a fair amount. And thus, the pressure is high. On top of that, performance is expected. I don't know what he's talking about, but Barton had a zeal that couldn't keep me silent. I must be a thorough investor. If that is not the case, then I cannot serve in this capacity. Thus, it is a problem in how one lives. But, what you intend to do must appear to be noble and right in your mind. Your report card would have a positive mark on it. However, Barton seemed to be lamenting the unreasonable principles of society as he said that. This is the kind of work of a drab branch in a drab bank. I had no words to counter with. Barton paid little heed to my exposed, dumbfounded expression as he quietly looked at the cup in his hand and continued. I won't say that is a bad line of work, of course. I don't think that it's a waste of time either. However, in doing something tepid like that, in just an instant, it will come falling down. The place I'm in is like that. Think about it. How much do you imagine it costs for all of us to live on the moon? It pales in comparison with the developed nations on Earth. Thus, I must decline. That is not an investment for me. It is not an investment for me at all. He said it succinctly. I had heard it before that when one goes about investing a large sum of money, they shouldn't let emotions control them. With a steel resolve and ironclad balls, even if the universe were to implode, an investment performance must always hold steady. Barton was the incarnation of all that. Besides, if you aim to reach Schrödinger Street, you should have that kind of volition. An investor must consider the best possible investment, the best possible conditions, the best possible interval at all times. These are the words of the sole person I hold respect for, Mr. Infallible. He was a beast with personal assets of 80 billion moles. Compared to him, I felt small enough to be crushed by him. So, if you think you can save these people, then take on this challenge as an investor. Time. There isn't enough time. I looked at the steam from Coco as I said that. There was only 1 day left. Only 1 day left. I have 720,000 moles in funds. At the end of Monday, I need to reach 1,000,000 moles at all costs. At the very least, I'd be fine with 900,000 moles. Wait, we needed that much? I thought we were like 100 or 80. I thought it was 800,000 that we needed to reach. Then again, he did mention that by paying the funds with the exact value, they still have nothing in their pockets for daily necessities. So that's why he wanted to pass that value. But it's not possible. Even if I desperately stack on as much profit as possible, 10% is the ceiling. So I raised my face and looked at Barton. I did not want to admit that my vision was blurred because I had been crying. So, yet Barton's tone was icy cold. Investor. A successful investor. He is a pro. Pro among pros. An obvious concept such as helping someone in trouble, leaving them indebted to you, was not something that he would agree with. I hung my head in shame, having nothing left to say. It was impossible. I was naive to think otherwise. Impossible. Is that so? And that's what Barton said. Desperately stacked on profits. Only 10%? Come on now. Since when did you lower yourself to that of a quant stooge? Oh? I raised my head and saw that Barton's angered face was scowling at me. I saw the last decision you made during the investment contest. It was rather impressive. That was it. That was the essence of a trader. With each move, one by one, your thinking became clear. It gave me shivers as I recalled my younger days. A failure is certainly a failure, but there are bets that one should continue to make. That is it. It brought back memories of the time that I'd been beaten by my father as he lectured me. It really was mysterious as to why I would remember him now, of all possible times. Besides, if you don't have enough time, then you just need to find a shortcut. Huh? I mean, that was kind of what Yoshiharu was trying to do here, is it not? Barton then sipped on his coffee. The time I took you around and explained to you my investment techniques. Do you remember what I said? I dug deep into the crevice of my mind. I had the confidence to have memorized it all. Yes. In that case. Ah, that's right. The building that we went to see. Do you remember the name of the company on that building? I don't know why he asked that question, but I answered immediately. Ring Tech. Huh? And then he suddenly raised his voice hysterically. Whoa now. Are you alright? Huh? Huh? Ring Tech is a fine company, but the company we saw was a different one, was it not? But what was it? I can't quite remember. Wait a moment. As Barton said that, he rummaged through his coat and pulled out a small terminal. And then he tapped the screen and started up. Oh yes, this. Now I remember. Here it is. Here. He placed a small terminal on the top of the table. There, it displayed the electronic data of that company. Come on, hang in there. I bought you at a high price after all. Barton looked at me as I peeked at the terminal and smirked as he laughed. Huh? But, well then, the smell of alcohol has gotten me hungry. Barton slapped me on the shoulder, saying that on purpose as he stood up. I looked back and forth a number of times between Barton and his electronic terminal. And then finally, a connection bridge inside my head. This was investment news. Speaking of which, when is it the next time it will rain here? There's usually nothing but bad news. Depressing stuff. I'm not looking forward to Monday. With his large chest sticking out, he muttered to himself. I feel like that's a hint of something. His excitement was enough to make the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Insider information. This was insider information. Rainy days do put me in a downer of a mood. Not a pleasant thing, right? Barton winked at me. He acted so silly and out of character. If I were a girl, I'd fall for him. What? Okay. Well, how about some food? I knew a place that had some great fish. I stood up and lowered my head. Sorry, today isn't going to work. Hmm? Right. A shame. But we can meet anytime, can't we? Right. Oh, already this late. I better make a phone call. Barton smirked as he laughed. Without saying a word of thanks, I lowered my head once more. I'll mail you again. Ah, I'll be waiting. It'll rain on Monday. Do keep that in mind. Yes. I responded and began to run before I turned back. I need to pay for the cocoa. Whoa now. You're going to embarrass me like that. Sorry. Minor details. Don't worry about it. They were aloof words. I ran through the elegant interior of the cafe. Many of the gentlemen and ladies wondered what was going on as they watched me go, but I paid no heed to those eyes. If nothing else, because of my teacher, who stood on top of the table at the VIP seat, shouted out, Godspeed, young one. Grasp the future with your own hands. Were the moons rich to say something like that to a damn brat in shabby clothing? It was a valuable thing. My chest was bursting with happiness as I continued to run. I ignored the eyes of onlookers as I ran, and even inside the confines of a crowded train, I wanted to run. I ran non-stop from the station to the church, and burrowed through the sanctuary of the church straight into the living room. And then I spoke. I will show you my investing technique. Seeing me like that, Hagana's eyes became round as she looked at me blankly. Huh? Sunday, Hagen and I slept. We slept as much as possible, put all the sleeping day that they skipped the days prior. I gave detailed instructions to Lisa that she was to keep out anyone waiting on us for some good news on the situation. On Monday, everything was on the line. For that reason, we rested up to recover strength. That was all we could do. Saturday night, we slept, and then Sunday morning, we got up to eat, and afterwards, went back to sleep. I wasn't sure when Hagana crawled into my bed, but I didn't think much of that. I was fine with it, since Hagana was relaxed too. See, they're so used to sleeping together like this. Like, they're very attached. In any case, we slept and slept. As if our two bodies had fused together somehow. We slept. Thus, as if somehow knowing when exactly to wake up, the both of us woke up at the same time and found that it was just the start of Monday at midnight. Interesting. Hagen and I looked at each other. I wasn't sure which of us woke up first, but for a brief moment, Hagen and I both held our breath. The feeling when our lips touched was softer and then sweeter than anything in this world. Sorry, what? At the same time, we said nothing. Instead, we decided with little trouble what to do after we got up. Carlisle Investment? As Hagana sat at her chair, she said this while starting up her terminal. I wondered if this was Hagana's way to get energized. She grasped her hair like she was going to curl it, and then brushed it before letting that beautiful black hair flutter down. Yeah. In my words, Hagana brought up the stock information. This, then? While looking, sitting next to Hagana, I squeezed out each word. Short sell it. Hagana said nothing. Instead, she opened her program and putting all her effort to supporting me, she started manipulating and calculating figures. Barton pointed to this stock while mentioning that it would rain on Monday. On top of that, suddenly there was news about rain. Without a doubt, it was insider information, and with regards to this company, there was some bad news flowing. Someone like Barton would have some connections to many hundreds of companies, and he'd certainly be listening in on thousands of people and what they had to say, especially since Monday comes right after the weekend when bad things are prone to happening. There have been situations such as a superior CEO taking one of his company's own manufactured bikes and riding it off a cliff to his death. Naturally, a company losing a great leader will lead to the stock hitting the lower variable price limit. You wouldn't know what would happen. That is why there are many cases of price drops the day before the weekend. Everyone would close positions that were in danger of any risk. Given that, this is probably the best company then. As the name suggested, Carlyle Investment was an investment company. Duh. Well, whether it were securities, real estate, or commodities, if it could be traded, then they dealt with it with a lack of any real fidelity. There were no accurate details from them. Based on that, it was unclear what, if anything, might happen. Annual earnings were not stable, with one year reaping in enormous profits and the next year take a big loss. It was common for them to say that they made consecutive large profits. That is why, for a gambling enterprise such as them, they drew out those who enjoy gambling. Even on Hagana's program, it displayed jaw-dropping price fluctuations. Terrible company, so it seems. But is it really sensitive to trading? But it is really sensitive to trading. Looking at the screen from one side of Hagana, I can see her collarbone. The word sensitive actually gave me a bit of a jolt. I felt like smacking my head for being an idiot, while Hagana tilted her head with a question mark over her. If we sell it all at once, I think it will drop. Ah, that will be good enough. We only have 1 day to trade after all. If it drops at that time, then that's good enough. But, will this really work? She asked worriedly. I suppose anyone would be in doubt and wonder if my head was on straight, if I suddenly came back in high spirits and declared that I knew which stock would drop tomorrow. On top of that, I didn't clearly understand what information I had received, as most of that was certainly grounded in inside information. Since I was a minor, I didn't think it would be judged by the penal code, but if I did get caught, then I most likely couldn't return to the normal investment world. But there's no way I would get caught. Odds are that I won't get caught. Frankly, there are much worse things happening in society. I'll undertake it. In God's name. Hagana frowned. You can laugh. Imprudence. I felt that was a rather elegant word for Hagana to use. But this is difficult. Difficult. Yeah. Would the news come first thing in the morning? But that wouldn't be in time. I couldn't make money if it hits the stop floor with the orders entered before trading. Barton would have known about something like that. If that were the case, it may come right in the middle of the trading. Thinking in normal terms, it would be best if the start of the trading would coincide with the commencement of a full-strength selling. However, instead of wild price fluctuations, Carlyle Investments' day-to-day trade volume was low. Compared to the funds I wanted to trade with, the trade volume was overwhelmingly low. This was a return to the last day investment content. See? Just a second try at that. If there is a large sell-off, the buys would be low, so naturally the volumes would drop. For example, if you sold 700,000 moves worth of stocks valued at 1,000 moves a share, if buy orders at 1,000 moves a share amount to only 10,000 moves total, my order would clear at a lower price. If liquidity were low, then the price would move due to your trading. It was possible for a price to hit close to the daily limit for a price drop. Not to mention, it was more likely the case after negative news comes out. It would be at my wit's end if right after selling, the daily limit for price drops were reached. In the end, in tears, all that could be done was to sell it bit by bit. I had my worries and misgivings about it, but time continued to move unabated as the market opened. Okay, we're back to the trading and the music. In order to not cause the buyers to scatter, we sold off shares stealthily. If there were a big drop, it had to happen after we sold big. Hagen was not aware of this insight. Carlyle Investments' starting price was 1,072 moles, but at the start of trading, it didn't move for the most part. It wasn't because of the news or any major changes in the market either, so one could say it was only natural. Thus, if I sold 10,000 moles worth, I'd wait 10 minutes for 5,000 moles worth. I'd wait 5 minutes. I didn't know when the news was going to come out. It was putting my stomach into knots. Hagana was fidgeting next to me like she wanted to go to the bathroom. Quickly. If I was gonna sell, I'd have to sell more. But I continued to use prudence as I sold. Doing that through the morning, I sold off 220 moles worth. At this point, it was the highest trade volume amount in a month. Most likely, people should have taken notice on that night. How much left? 500,000 moles. This is taking forever. But the news didn't come out during the afternoon recess, and the increase in volume was soon detected as people started to gather. Buyers lined up with their gathered funds, while there were sellers other than ourselves lined up with orders as well. Alongside the afternoon opening, pretending to take advantage of the sell-off, in one stroke, I had a short sale of 70,000 moles. As if pressing on some elastic rubber, after making a slight dent, the buyers came in, and the price returned to its starting point. Logically speaking, there was no reason for the price to drop, so the buying did not seem strange at all. Holding my eagerness in check, I ignored the other sellers. This time, after 30 minutes, I sold off 50,000 moles worth. There was still half of it remaining. The price fluctuation held in place miraculously with the little change compared to the previous day. The time had just reached 2 o'clock. Was it about time for the news to come out? Or could it be that it would arrive after trading ended? I really didn't know when business news would come out. If it were an announcement of the settlement of accounts, then the announcement would be made after the market closed in the case of companies trying to cause chaos. But frequently, the information got leaked to journalists who'd publicize the information, and I hope that wouldn't be the case here. No matter what time the news was announced, hopefully it would be that. If it was something like a bolt out of the blue, then maybe it'd be appropriate to say, God only knows. After that, I sold 40,000 moles and crossed over the halfway mark. It's a strange feeling. This is my first time trading like this. At Hagna's words, I looked up. The living room was as it usually was, but she was right that it did seem weird. Lisa said that she really didn't want to watch how things unfolded today and had stepped out. Due to that, perhaps it was too quiet. I don't know. Is this trading? Hagana asked. She was probably this talkative due to the unbearable tension. Yes, it's a method of trading that I have seen in Newton City. Another buy appeared, and 10,000 moves worth was sold. Other selling appeared, but as expected, the buys became unsteady. Perhaps the pace was a bit too quick. I thought for a moment. Hey, how? Hagana called my name and looked at me. Hagana gazed at me. What? How? Are you gonna leave here? You're going to talk about this now? To be clear, I thought that, but to Hagana, that might have been the most important matter. If that were the case, then I couldn't just ignore it now. I looked back at the computer while nodding. Or rather, in exchange for following him, he shared that bit of information with me. Hagana was a bit speechless. It occurred to me that I had chosen my words incorrectly. Hagana had been sold off on Earth. Wait, what exactly you say? In exchange for following him, he shared that. Yeah. Oops. Okay. No, but I learned from him. And when I turned to leave, he stood up on the table, and that's how he told me. Another 50,000 moves sold. The price dropped, then returned quickly. He said, Godspeed, young one. The key to winning the future is in your hands. I really was happy at that. It was in a place people could see, not to mention in the cafe of high-class hotel. He's a really good person. More than Lisa? Um, they're in different categories. I'm gonna ask. Uh, Compared to Lisa, well, the genres are totally different. See, that's what I was saying. Genre? Like the gender or something. I don't know if gender would be the right way to put. During the time I was talking, another 70,000 moves was sold. 510,000 moves sold. Due to the rate of price drop, soon it would be within range. Although buyers retreated slowly from the battlefront, they did not lose their fighting spirit. The stock price continued to resist at 1,064 moves. That should have cut off buying. Because he's a male? Yeah. Well, what if that person were female? You shouldn't ask strange questions like that. I thought as I chuckled a bit. You were the one that led the conversation this direction, Yoshiharu. It's your fault. What's so funny? Nothing. If he was female? Thinking about a female version of Barton didn't make me laugh. If that were the case, then Lisa. Really? Hagana sighed in relief. What was that all about? As I asked, Hagana said this quietly. I don't want you to leave. Yeah, I expect that. She did not hesitate. It was one of two possibilities. Either she'd hide her emotions or she wouldn't. That couldn't be effective. I can't. As I answered, 8,000 moves was sold. So we're having such an important conversation as we're in this do or die situation with the market, huh? As expected, the buying side was now agitated. The price got over 1,060 wall. Nevertheless, everything was as agreed at 590 moles. All that was left was 130,000. For the sake of your dream? Hagen asked. Right. Lucky. Hagen quietly looked at me, almost like a child would. I want that toy too. Her eye said that to me. But it wasn't the right sort of place for Hagana. I remember when Barton turned down my request for funds. That was not a righteous route. If possible, I want Hagana and Lisa to never know such a place as that in their lifetime. It'd be good if you had dreams of your own. I prepared a 30,000 wool sale order. Hagana grabbed that hand. Oh? What is it now? You aren't going to find that dream in my hand, you know. I said that with a strange smile, and Hagana's face stiffened. What? It's here. Huh? It's here. Hagana repeated herself like a stubborn child and squeezed my hand. The screen showed the beginnings of the tug of war between sellers and buyers, with the advantage tilted towards the sellers. With the explosion in trade volumes, the persistent sell-offs were beginning to draw people in, who were suspicious that maybe some sort of negative news was going to come out. Okay, this is not the first time she's noticing something like that. Perhaps she does have an innate talent that they're not realizing, because this is not the first time that she stopped him. I didn't know where they were going to announce the details about the stocks, not restricted to the main news outlets. If industry-oriented media were to make an announcement, there would also be a possibility that an announcement would happen at seminars geared towards institutional investors. What both had in common was that at that moment, wherever that announcement was made, it would then affect the stock prices. And this sounds completely off. That was why it was normal to wonder if such information may come out where one would least expect when there's a chance of turbulent price fluctuations. The sellers were on the offensive. Now was the only time to sell. But I didn't move. Though she seemed powerless in the grasp of Hagena's hand, I couldn't move much. There is... Here. As Hagena said that, she looked up. Those weren't lightless, dark eyes. They were powerful eyes that sought one's hope. I want to... Hagena earnestly withstood the urge to cry as she said it. Live in peace with everyone. The lunar surface was a place where people had the wildest of dreams, but was a place where many people drifted who couldn't even enjoy the bare minimum of happiness. Hagena was one of them, and this girl's dream was to live in peace with everyone. It was so natural, but simultaneously so difficult. Just searching through my memory, I could recall many examples like that. There were probably very few people's faces that Hagena could remember. Her head was filled to the brim with mathematics, with no room for anything else to be absorbed. First on that list of faces was Lisa, probably. And my name was in there as well. I looked back at Hagena, and her face became strained as she looked downcast. Perhaps my face was one of those as well. Perhaps it was within reason to be able to live together with others. But to live in peace was absolutely impossible. Recalling how Barton called Wisen's Daimler request was very clear to me. Investors did not make their living investing. It's personified people who lived only for investing above anything else. For someone like me, ignorant in the ways of society, if I were to live the way that Barton did, for starters, I'd be well aware that danger lay in wait for me. Betrayal and schemes. That was everything to people, perhaps. Jumping straight into that world, I would feel insecure about being able to bask in the sun with Lisa in the garden on the third floor. And would think I shouldn't even be doing something like that. Being an investor was a lifestyle. If one wanted a warm milk and honey way of life, then this was certainly not the path to take. I couldn't shake off Hagena's hand and pull mine gently from it. I must decline. I said it softly, much as Barton said it to me. I put out 30,000 move sell order during the state of reduced activity. The price fluctuation reacted in response. The walls of the tens digits at 1,050 was scaled, going up to 1,051 moves a share. I will make these profits and go shredding your stream. Stock price would drop little by little at times, like someone losing their foot while climbing a set of stairs. 620,000 moves worth had already been sold, and at that point, the profits were starting to reach 10,000 moves. Honestly, though, it was really only a small change. I steel my nerves. I wasn't bluffing when I said I considered it small change. My thoughts were that with several tens, nay, hundreds of billions of moon that control the future, I would rise above that money, and I imagined gazing upon something that no one else had ever seen. Just as Barton had said, funding those in need and collecting interest as a form of gratitude was something that a boring division within a boring bank would do. In that case, Hagena uttered those words. Huh? In that case, make money. At the very least, make money. Hagena was angry, but at that moment I realized that there was something to be happy about even when her expression was angry. I'll make money. I'll make heaps. I returned my gaze to the computer screen. In my mind was a powerful figure of Barton giving me a pep talk while standing on top of that cafe table. This here is the way they trade on Schrödinger Street. It blew past everything, whether it was mathematical assistance or even intuition through experience. Insider? That wasn't it. This was an extreme way of trading that only humans could do. Hagena's program was certainly impressive. Oops, but there was no room for human judgment. Cold and sharp, it was without equal. Humans who used that no longer had their human dignity, as it was reinforced that they should toss out the need to think. How? That is why, when Hagana suddenly called out my name, my mouth laughed by itself. 1 second. Sorry, my throat was very dry there. The falling stock price stopped falling and changed direction. If there was no rational reason why it dropped, then there was no reason at all for it to go up. It was the atmosphere, so to speak. It was all about the atmosphere, and I rose up from the screen as my chest sucked in the atmosphere. It will work, no matter where. What was left in my hands was a 100,000 moles sell order. As the buys went out, stock price was like the main character of a story, always getting up to no matter how many times he was knocked down. As it got up steadily, 1,052, 1,051, 1,052, 1,053. In a fictional world, the bad guy would kindly wait for the main character to stand up, but that was not true for reality. True anime, like the villains always let the main characters talk, like recompose themselves. You take down who you could, when you could, completely. A similar believer in the philosophy of investing was struck down mercilessly in one blow. 40,000 was sold. I could almost see the faces of the buyers on the other side of the screen after the fruitless efforts. The stock price marched on down. 1,052, 1,051, 1,050, and breached the insufficient defense as it continued down to 1,049, 1,048. This was a downward pattern. Advantage-seeking sellers came out at 1,046, at 1,044, at 1,041 as it sped up. Even if there's no news, I'll get away with selling it all. Just when I thought I'd make a full power swing with the remaining 100,000 moles. How? Oh. Black and white. Agla's sharp voice stopped my hand, and right afterwards, the stock price stopped moving. It wasn't because things were entering a state of reduced activity. The moment I saw it, that glimpse told me enough. During trading, when a rather large order came out, it would get stored up for a bit in order to stop an instantaneously large price fluctuation. So it's almost like how everything in a cartoon goes into slow motion when someone uses a finishing move. And then, what got accumulated became something like a time bomb that you knew had a delayed explosion. At 1,038 moles, like molten magma, massive buy came. The total amount of 230,000 moles was like a massive meteorite slamming to a planet, taking everyone with it. That amount continued to grow. Was a sell-off coming? If so, then I was gonna make some buys. News related to Carlyle investments still hadn't come out. Someone, angered by the ruse that was the seller's offensive, put out a buy order aiming to raise the price. For as many as expected the price to go down, just as many expected it to go up. That was how market prices took shape. Hagana clung to my arm desperately. This was different from the time during the investment contest. This real money was going to make a massive hit. The stock price crept up stealthily. An overwhelming amount of money pushed it up. We were using margin selling, so when the price went up, the profits would disappear. And if we did something wrong, then it would be a loss. The people entering the buy orders were surely aiming for that scenario. But I didn't get a glance at Hagana at all, as I quietly focused on the screen. I wasn't a bit flustered since I had Barton's information. This was important if we wanted orders to completely envelop the buy orders, no matter how much the price went up. If rain fell as Barton said it should, then it would hit the variable price limit. If it was a stock that seemed like a strong gamble, then even a trivial bit of news would be enough to cause its price to fluctuate wildly. Firstly, without a doubt, a limit on the price drop would occur. If that were to happen, with more margin selling and higher prices, the profit would be higher when it returns cheap buys. For someone like Hagana, who built a foundation upon mathematics and statistics, it wasn't stunt worth trying. Each time the price slowly... Oh my god, I just realized I was not recording the game at all. This whole time. See? Wow. You guys just had my voice this entire time and no game audio. And when I was even mentioned the game audio. Each time the price slowly crept up, Hagna squeezed my arm with more strength. The price surpassed 1,060 and reached 1,065, to 1,066, 1,065, 1,066, 1,067, and it went opposite to how it was earlier, while also changing at a faster rate. As we had exceeded our acquired funds, the losses were starting to appear. With the stock price now at 1,071, we were plus minus zero from the days before. It was a moment when sellers and buyers were both on the offense and defensive, resisting each other. Now I'm thinking about the recording, I hate that. And then, at that instance, the price started to climb up. Trade volume exploded, and the movements became extreme as more people caught wind of the situation. I did not panic. I was determined not to panic. But that was not the case for Hagana. How? Something's weird. Huh? It's weird. Why is it not going down, even with all that selling? Why do bad things keep happening? Was what she asked, like an innocent girl. Hagana was used to misfortune. She dealt with a lot of struggles before. She was used to it. That was why she was not used to thinking about what would happen next. Dealing with the outcome was my duty. While I looked straight at the screen, I answered. Only natural, because the news hasn't come out. Conditions for sellers and buyers, it's 50-50. But I know that this stock will go down, so no matter what it is necessary to sell early. Due to that, it dropped first, but no one else knows the information that I got hold of. So they resisted buying in response, and it went up. That is only natural. Didn't I say before that trading was like rock, paper, scissors, where you saw someone's move beforehand? This was especially true for stocks that attracted gambling types. One would be used such speculative movement. But Hagana murmured as she let go of my arm. And then slowly she went to her terminal and fiddled with it. Hagana inputted the numbers in her program, and I looked at initial calculations. I said it wasn't possible. But I told you it wasn't this type of trading, right? When the stock price went up steadily, at a speed that was anything but slow, it was natural to feel pressure. But look at Hagana, who relied on that program. I started to feel scorn towards it. For a program that we relied on that much on, it felt like an old, run-down computer we could no longer use. And Hagana, who relied on that, was like a little girl who consulted her horoscope for everything. So it was clear to me that she wasn't the sort of partner I'd want to trade with anymore. Give up already. It was difficult to see Hagana fall to that level, and I said that without another thought. And then Hagana answered. This is all that I can do. Her face was a mix of anxiety and nervousness. At my words, her face was not that of a cheeky girl who had absolutely refuted me. Where is the news? It's not coming, is it? I could see that through what she was implying with those reserved words, and I kept my mouth shut. The time was now 4 o'clock, 1 hour left. It was late, but there was still 1 hour to go. How? Really, it's strange. I don't know why the price won't go down. I kept my mouth shut as Hagana continued. Where is the news? She asked once more, so I had no choice but to respond. There isn't any. According to Lisa, Toyama would come precisely at 5 o'clock. He requests a bank employee he was friends with to keep the counter open a bit longer. According to the schedule, it ended at the same time as trading ended, So all the money on hand would need to be withdrawn so the loan could be repaid. An hour left to go. In 1 hour, all will be decided. Buy orders came out again as I thought about that, and I could hear the sound of Hagana's breath getting taken away. As if she was looking at a tilted glass on the table, her breath slowed as she watched the price fluctuate. I knew what she was thinking. Stop, 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 as she prayed. Though I believe Barton, at some point in time, I had to clench my fist so much that it dripped with sweat. Was I an idiot? Right as I was criticizing myself, the stock price finally stopped at 1,089. Hey, will it be alright? I'm gonna ask once more. She was nervous. Right as I was wiping my palm, I responded, "Have some faith." That was all I could say. But the price has not gone down. Looking at any other period of time, such a statistical result is... Calculation error? I said I'd stop Hagana from repeating the same thing again. I was more surprised that I interrupted Hagana than I was at her displeased expression. I became aware that my tone had become stronger. You said that there would be errors in the calculation. I added those words on to show that I wasn't angry. That is true. Then it must be that. Besides, I didn't say anymore, but Hagana's program wasn't complete. It was wrong occasionally. Especially during the last trades of the investment contest. Hagana's calculation was wholly off the mark. In terms of the possibility, that was only natural. But this time, it was going to cost real money. There was a real human cost for a large number of people. The fates of myself, Chris, and a lot of others were at stake. If we failed here, a lot of people would be left out in the cold. Coming here from Earth, being oppressed by the strong, everything they owned got taken away through gritting teeth, while only the ones who took away their stuff amassed a fortune. Right now, for the sake of the dreams of many people, I stood firm. Despite that, why couldn't Hagana trust me at all? Hagana's anxiety-filled face was getting darker and darker. Intermittently, she still glances at me, wanting to say that it would have been best to just close out all positions. To be honest, if we stuck to the basic of trading up until now, you would have all stopped trading a while. For the sake of gaining profits, what was needed was simple. Don't have losses. That was why, if losses started to appear, positions would be closed. That way, losses would be capped at an absolute minimum, and the small amount of profit could be preserved. But this wasn't that kind of trading. It wasn't that kind of trading. But why did Hagana not understand that? I was filled with irritation when I suddenly realized something. I looked at Hagana as if to repel her again, and Hagana returned my look timidly. Within my chest, the words, "Could it be?" were in control. Could it be that Hagana had inadvertently said it? This trading affected a great number of people's dream. The dream that good fortune had finally come down upon us was also affected. Thus, for myself, this was but a skirmish in order to enter Schrodinger's stream. But Hagana was different. Hagana's dream was not affected. Hagana's dream was for myself, Lisa, probably Chris, and anyone else close to her to be able to live quietly, live together in this church. You could say that it wasn't greedy. You could say that it was idyllic. But it wasn't even funny that for such a trivial dream, Hagana's earnest hope was right within view. If that were the case, then didn't Hagana think that way? That if we were to fail here, that I would not leave her? A was B, and thus, if B was C, then A had to be C. Hagana's straightforward thought process meant that this was more than a clear possibility. It was childish and pitiful, awkward way of thinking. Time continued to move on, and soon it was 4:15. I still had to sell order in reserve. When I knew that the price would finally drop, if the price only went up, only selling would lead to a bigger profit. but Hagana accepted my hesitation. Now, Hagana called my name. It was an anxious voice. It sounded like it would be crushed. But I pretended like I didn't hear her. I sympathized with Hagana's simple dream here, but if I didn't go with the best investment at the best time with the best technique, then I couldn't be an investor. I wouldn't be an investor. I stared at the screen. Hagana no longer stole looks, and I was painfully aware that she was looking right at me. Ow. Shut up, I yelled at her unintentionally. Hagana did not narrow her eyes. Her eyes were like those of a scolded puppy. My bad. I said that as I returned to the screen. The news wasn't coming. When would it come out? The buy orders trickled in one by one. Was it coming? Why wasn't it coming yet? Hagana worked slowly at her terminal. I stole a glance at her and saw that the expected price range had taken an irregular shape. Based on the estimate, a severe increase was predicted. My eyes returned to the computer. It was true that, given the circumstances, I would start making buys. But big trades were always like that. In order to make big profit, it was necessary to make opposite of those of the idiotic masses. When it came to buying and selling, you couldn't have one without the other. Just as one person making profits would require another taking a loss. I was not wrong. It was not wrong. The ones who were wrong were the unknowing masses. I waited for those people of thinking. I was waiting, after all. Even though I looked at Hagana as she tried to get my attention, I knew what she was thinking. The time hit 4:30, which left us with 30 minutes. You know what? This is going way too long. We're ending it here. We're leaving this cliffhanger, because goddamn it's going too long. My throat can't handle it anymore, and I'm still annoyed at the fact that I cut out the game audio for most of the episode. But yeah, now they're nervous, the news isn't coming out, nothing's going. They have 30 minutes left for any changes. They're nowhere close of the value they need. I don't even know how much they can make with what they have left. So, things are not looking good. Well, we'll have to wait for next time to see what actually happens. And with that being said, see you next time. Bye!